Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, Matt with Green Bar Trading. I have a really interesting video for you guys here today as it's earnings season upon us. Now, there's some things that I've noticed that are going to be very interesting in this video. Now, it's patterns. Those of you that have followed me for a while now know that I like to identify patterns. They tend to repeat themselves. They don't have to repeat themselves. So just because I'm going to be saying this does not mean it has to happen. But what is interesting to me are these patterns. They're really very weird, actually, how much they have been repeating themselves in the past. And this is going to be on the SPY and on the Qs the last time earnings season happened, which was 3 months ago. So exactly 3 months ago, the earnings started with the banks, and then I'll show you guys the earnings that we have coming up this week. It starts to roll over into, the tech stocks start to report and everything else. Now, when you're trading, it's very important to look at how the earnings reports and how the stocks act after the earnings reports come out. Even if they're good, if they're bad, sometimes we see the best earnings reports and the stock goes straight down. So it's important to see whether the big guys are selling into retail strength. So once we see good earnings reports, a lot of retail likes to buy when they see the stocks up a lot. They like to buy. Retail loves to buy and chase things. Well, the big guys, they love to sell into that strength. So sometimes when earnings season starts, you'll see the big institutions taking advantage of such volume and a lot of buying. And it's a good way because they have huge positions. What you have to realize, the people creating all the volume, it's the big institutional investors, the big hedge funds, the big trading desks. These are the guys that have all the shares to unload, and they need people to sell it to. So that's what tends to happen sometimes during earnings season. So anyway, before we get started, I've done my homework. Give me the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, and I do appreciate every single one of you guys for hitting that thumbs up for me. So anyway, here we go. Sharing the screen. Now, what we're looking at, this is the SPY. So let me just bear with me a second. These levels up here, they're kind of covering. Now, this is the daily chart. So this is the 1 year, 1 day daily chart with my 200-day moving average, my 50-day moving average, my 20 EMA, and the RSI. For the purpose of this video, we're going to be looking at the RSI. The RSI on the daily chart can really tell you a story. Now, I'm not going to say this is predicting anything. I'm just going to show you guys a pattern that I've noticed with the SPY and with the QQQ. Now, these are ETFs that track the overall market. The QQQ, that is the tech market. That's the NASDAQ. And the SPY is the S&P 500. These are the two that I like to focus on. I get a good, picture of the overall market by following both the SPY and the technology. So this is the SPY. Now I have my RSI up here. The RSI shows a very specific level that price likes to come down to, which is around 40 to 41 on the RSI. Every time that we've hit highs here, which are the overbought levels, we tend to eventually pull back somewhere around 40 on the RSI. Now, we had hit the overbought area here, and it looks like we're heading straight down to potentially the 40 again. I don't know if that's going to happen, but when the RSI was at overbought levels, that's where you want to be really cautious about going long, because that means that the market's already overbought. So you don't really want to go long when the RSI on the overall market is at these overbought levels. You want to wait for, better prices. The market pulls back, and then we get involved again. So now here, going back to November of last year, I drew out a trend line. It touched here, it touched here, it touched here about a month ago. And now I'm just going to zoom in. These levels are important levels that show up nicer on the 20-day. They're just kind of covering my chart right now, but I'll get into all that in a second. But just want to show you guys, when we pulled back to the trend line back in June 18th to be exact, the potential, not saying it has to happen, but there is this trend line that has a possibility of the SPY pulling back to. And I drew that trend line out. When you're drawing trend lines, you want to see it hit at least 3 times. That gives you a very good indication on how strong that trend is. We are in a very obvious uptrend in the overall market. Now, just because we might sell off a little bit, as long as we bounce off that trend line, which looks like this trend line is going to be around 426-ish. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to want to see this trend line get a bounce. So that's the SPY. And you can see here with this green dotted line here that I drew out at the bottom, this is where the RSI pulls back. So when we topped out here, the market pulled back to 40 on the RSI. We topped out again, making all-time highs at the time. We pulled back again to the 40 RSI. Same thing over here, made new highs. We pulled back to the RSI at 40. Again here, pulled back to the RSI at 40. That's the reason why I'm showing you guys this very specific pattern that has happened, because it has happened once, twice, 3, it's happened 4 times. While it happened 4 times, it has hit this trend line, each one of those areas. So this is something that I'm going to be watching very closely to see if this specific pattern holds up. So this is the SPY. Now, looking at the Qs, once again, 1 day, 1 year, that's the time frame that I use for the RSI and everything else. We have a very specific trend line here that I drew out. It touched once, twice, 3 times. Now, the QQQ is way, way more overextended than the SPY. Now, the QQQ is the tech market, and we all know that all the big tech has been absolutely gangbusters. So we are way, way off of this trend line down here. And look at this RSI. Huge, huge numbers on the RSI. The last time back in August, that we were so overbought, that's when we pulled back, pretty hard. So I'm not saying that has to happen again, but starting with the trend line, okay? If we pull back to the trend line, we're all the way up here. There's almost 20 points on the Qs to come back down to this long-term trend line here, which goes back all the way to last November. So this is a pretty legit trend line here. I'm not saying that it has to pull back that much, but who knows? The RSI is very, very overbought. So now a couple of key areas within this trend line, because that's what I want to look at when I'm looking for patterns. I want to look at this specific trend. So while we touched here and here, this is where the RSI went down to, which is about 33 on the RSI. We are well off that 33 number, which would get us pretty close to the trend line. Not saying that that has to happen. I'm just saying if you go long, tech stocks, just be careful. Just know that you're buying at all-time highs, and just know that the RSI was very, very high. This is where I was buying the SQQQ, which is the triple inverse leveraged ETF for the QQQ. It goes up when the QQQ goes down. So it's a way of making money when the market is looking like it might go down. So we bought here. I made a video. You guys can check it out. It was about 3 or 4 days ago. The RSI was so overbought. I went into the SQQQ, and since we did that, the RSI dropped. The market dropped. And, I didn't make this stuff up. I mean, it's very clear as day. When you're so overbought something, the market has its way of correcting itself. So anyway, that was pretty clear, pretty obvious, and that's what happened. Now, this is where this gets really, really, really interesting. It's something that I noticed while I was doing the research for this video. The start of the last earnings season, which was 3 months ago, happened right here. Got it written down. So right here, which was 4/16. So April 16th, I'm just gonna, zoom in on this area here. So April 16th earnings season, kicks off, started with the banks and all that other stuff. Leading up to this, we were getting overbought. Same thing, kind of like what was happening here with the current stock market, okay? Once again, patterns. I noticed these patterns forming. Now, take a look at these 3 trading days. This gets really, really cool. These 3 trading days here, because this was basically the start of the pullback. The RSI was high. It wanted to pull back. Now, it didn't immediately pull back. The market doesn't usually work like that. Sometimes you'll get a pullback and a little consolidation before another pullback to our RSI. So that is just the pattern that I'm looking at. Now, if I zoom in, you guys can see these candles here, the start of last year's earnings. And, earnings season has its funny way, like I explained at the beginning, of the big funds rotating in and out of certain things, churning some shares, selling off some profit. Just overall, during earnings season, you get a lot of movement, which is good for day trading. So now, if we zoom in on, and I wish these lines weren't here just to show you, the start here of earnings season, take a look at those 3 candles. Once again, there's a pattern forming here. We were at all-time highs, and now we were at all-time highs again. We pulled back those 3 days. We pulled back these 3 days. I'm not saying that these candles, we're going to have a big green day tomorrow. I'm not saying that, but look at this. So at its high, we were at 342. 3 days later, we were at 334, 8 points. So it went down 8 points. Well, wouldn't you know it? Right here, we were at 365. 3 days later, we pulled back to 357. 8 points. Patterns, they tend to repeat. It's pretty wild, and I find this stuff really interesting. This is like the nerd in me, but I love to find things like this. Start of earnings season, we pull back, the RSI was high here, the RSI was high here. Where will we end up? Will this happen where we get a sell-off? Will we get a sell-off after a little consolidation, this week? Who knows? I'm just here to show you cool stuff like this. So this is it right here. We pulled back to 33 on the RSI. Now, we were even more overbought than we were here. Do we pull back all the way to the 33 in the RSI? Maybe. I'm going to be looking for this trend line to hold as support in an uptrend. We're uptrending. There's nothing wrong with this market. It's extremely bullish. You might have a little pullback here. Now the SQQQ is definitely a way that you guys can play it. And I'm just going to change this for a second. So looking at it on the 20-day, 30-minute, the SQQQ, which goes up, as you can see here, when the Qs go down, like I said, we bottomed out right here at 832. We bottomed out. So this is basically formed a bottom. Now, will we continue a march up if the tech market sells off more, like we just went over? Then SQQQ will start to go up, pretty high. And percentage-wise, I mean, you could get a pretty big percentage out of this. Let's look at it more on the 90-day. I mean, look at how much higher we can go. From a percentage back to where we were in, let's see here, in May, we were at about $13. We saw a double top here. Is that a double top? Almost a double top. So percentage-wise, the SQQQ can definitely be something interesting to get into if the market does, in fact, pull back. Not saying that it has to. So let me just share this with you guys. Okay, so right here, this is our earnings. These are our earnings for this coming week. Monday, you have a couple of banks. You have IBM, Tractor Supply. On Tuesday, you start to get into a little bit of, tech stocks. Wednesday, not really crazy with the tech stocks, but these are more, Dow Jones stocks. And then on Thursday, some more banks, Crocs, Twitter, and Snap. This will be very interesting on Thursday for those two. And what I want everyone to do is see how the stocks react to the earnings. Are they going to sell off during the earnings, or are they going to go up during earnings? And then if you have seen enough, and let's say these stocks have really good earnings reports, but they sell off, well, you know, that gives you a better directional bet, right? You can buy puts, you can short stocks going into earnings. Now, it's much more risky playing earnings reports because sometimes they won't follow the way that you think they're going to go. But I've noticed more often than not, if you have these good companies and they have good earnings, but they sell off, there's a better chance that, you know, you can play some puts on some upcoming earnings where you can actually do pretty well. So anyway, those are the earnings there for the week. I think, you know, the week after this is going to be way more heavy NASDAQ stocks. And then the week after that, even more. But we're in earnings season. So we're going to see how, you know, all this stuff ends up trading. So like I said, patterns do not have to repeat. But as I just showed you guys, very specific and interesting that those patterns work out the way they do with the RSI, and like I showed you with those candles on the charts. And I like to find stuff like that because it gives me something to go by. Now, when you're trading, we all want to trade an edge, and something that I'm really good at is doing technical analysis, noticing patterns, noticing when certain things sell off during the days, and that's something that you know, gives me that edge to be profitable. So if you watched my video yesterday, you saw the frustration that I had with trading on Friday. So I'm going to go into this week, and I'm not going to be too antsy. I'm not going to be too aggressive. I want the market to tell me what it's going to do. I don't want to go in and think that I know which way the momentum is going to look. The stocks, maybe AMC should do this or that. No, I'm going to let price action. I'm going to be less aggressive than I was on Friday. And I just want to hit a couple of nice trades this week. Nothing crazy, because I did have a bad day on Friday and I want to get that confidence back. And I'm going to do it low risk and take those quality A+ setups. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Like usual, I do appreciate every one of you. Hit that thumbs up, and I will see you guys back on the next video.